The great hall of the Galactic Council was beautiful. Light from 1,000 stars poured through crystal walls. Delegates from 50 species sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood a platform where speakers addressed the most powerful beings in the known universe. Ambassador. Park Yuna walked toward that platform with her back straight and her head high. She had done this many times before. 30 years of speaking to aliens who looked at humans like they were children playing at a game meant for adults. 30 years of patience. 30 years of hope that things would change. Today, she carried a proposal that could save millions of lives. High Arbiter Velox watched her approach. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light like a mirror. His eyes held no warmth. They never did when he looked at humans. To him, humanity was a young species that had crawled out of its planet only 150 years ago. They were useful sometimes, like tools. But tools did not deserve respect. Yuna reached the platform and bowed slightly, not too deep. Humans had learned that bowing too low made the council think they were weak. "Honored? Delegates," she began. Her voice was calm and clear. The Voidborn threat grows stronger each day. 3 star systems have gone dark in the past month. We do not fully understand this enemy, but we know one thing. They are coming for all of us. She pressed a button on her wrist, and images appeared in the air above her. Ships made of shadow. Planets consumed by darkness. Cities that had held billions of lives, now empty and cold. Earth proposes a joint defense initiative, Yuna continued. Human engineers have developed new shield technology that can resist Voidborn attacks. Our military strategists have studied their patterns. We believe a combined fleet, using tactics developed by Captain Lee Daesong, can stop their advance at the Reller corridor. She paused and looked around the room. Some delegates leaned forward with interest. Others whispered to each other. And some, like Velox, sat perfectly still with expressions that revealed nothing. "We ask only for the chance to help," Yuna said. "Humanity wishes to stand beside our galactic neighbors in this time of crisis." For a moment, there was silence. Then High Arbiter Velox rose from his chair. The crystal walls seemed to grow darker as he spoke. "The Council thanks Earth for its enthusiasm," he said. The way he said the word made it sound like an insult. "But this is a matter for species with experience in galactic warfare. Humans have been traveling between stars for barely a century. Your species still fights wars among yourselves. You are emotional, unpredictable, primitive." Soft laughter rippled through the hall. Not from everyone, but from enough. Yuna's face did not change. She had expected this. She had heard these words before, spoken in different ways, but they still cut deep. "With respect, High Arbiter," she said. "Human medical teams have saved over 2 million lives across Council space in the past decade. Our engineers rebuilt the Thalian power grid after the solar flare of Yes, Velox interrupted with a wave of his hand. "Humans are adequate workers. No one disputes this. But workers do not design the building. They carry the stones." More laughter. Louder this time. In the observation deck above the hall, Admiral Kimteho stood with his hands behind his back. He wore his uniform with quiet pride. Every medal on his chest represented a battle fought, a life saved, a sacrifice made. The Council did not recognize human military honors. To them, his medals were just decorations. He watched Yuna stand alone on that platform, surrounded by beings who saw her as less than themselves. His chest tightened with anger, but his face remained calm. Teho had learned long ago that showing anger to the Council only proved their beliefs about humans being emotional. Beside him stood Dr. Choi Hannah. She was small and quiet, with gentle eyes that hid a brilliant mind. Her research on the Voidborn had revealed critical weaknesses in their structure, information that could save entire planets. That research had been presented to the Council last month, but the official report listed a Thalian scientist as the lead researcher. Hannah's name appeared nowhere. She had not complained. What would be the point? "They will never see us as equals," Hannah said softly. No matter what we do, Teho did not respond. He just watched as Yuna bowed again and left the platform. Her proposal had been rejected. Again, the council moved on to other matters, already forgetting she had spoken. Later, Yuna returned to the human delegation ship. It was a small vessel compared to the massive cruisers of other species, but it was clean and well maintained. Humans took care of what they had. Tejo was waiting for her in the corridor. Their eyes met, and 1,000 words passed between them without sound. Disappointment, frustration, exhaustion, and something else. Something that had been growing for years. "How long do we keep trying?" Tejo asked quietly. Yuna looked at him. In the artificial light of the ship, she suddenly looked tired. 30 years of fighting for scraps of respect. 30 years of watching her people give everything and receive nothing in return. She did not answer his question. Perhaps because she did not know the answer. Perhaps because she was afraid of what the answer might be. In the distance, stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, the Voidborn consumed another world. And the Galactic Council continued to argue about politics and power. Blind to the truth that stood before them, humanity had come to the stars with open hands and hopeful hearts. They had offered friendship, knowledge, and sacrifice. And in return, they had received only silence. But silence, Una was beginning to understand, was its own kind of answer. She walked past Tejo without a word. He watched her go, then turned to look out the window at the council station. Beautiful, proud, arrogant, for the first time in 30 years. Admiral Kim Tejo wondered if humanity had made a mistake, not in coming to the stars, but in believing that the stars would ever welcome them home. 3 months passed like slow poison. The Voidborn did not wait for the Galactic Council to make decisions. They moved through space like a plague, consuming everything they touched. 2 more star systems went dark. Billions of lives gone in moments. The galaxy was beginning to feel fear. High Arbiter, Velux called an emergency session. The crystal hall that once held casual laughter now echoed with worried voices. Delegates who had spent centuries feeling safe behind, their fleets now looked at each other with uncertain eyes. The council needed soldiers. They needed ships. They needed bodies to throw at the darkness. They needed humans. Ambassador Park Yuna stood before them once again. This time, she was not alone. Admiral Kim Tejo stood beside her, and behind them waited a delegation of human officers. Captain Lee Dae-sung wore his battle scars like medals. Dr. Choi Hanna carried datapads filled with research. They had come prepared to finally be heard. Velux spoke first. His voice was less arrogant than before. Fear had softened it slightly. "The Council recognizes Earth's military capabilities," he said. "In this time of crisis, we require human ships and soldiers to join the front lines. Your vessels will operate under the command of Commander Yees and the combined galactic fleet." Yuna nodded slowly. "Earth is willing to contribute. However, we request that human officers be included in strategic planning." "Captain Lee has developed that will not be necessary," Velux interrupted. His old dismissiveness returned like a bad habit. "Your soldiers will receive their orders like all others. Workers do not sit at the architect's table, Ambassador. We have discussed this before." The words hung in the air. Workers. After 30 years of service, humanity was still just labor to them. Hands to carry their stones. Bodies to fill their graves. Tejo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Yuna's eyes flickered with something that might have been pain, but she controlled her face perfectly. "I understand," she said quietly. There was nothing else to say. 2 weeks later, the human medical ship Sol Dawn received a distress call. A Thalian colony on the edge of Council space was collapsing. A Voidborn attack had damaged their atmospheric processors. 40,000 people were slowly suffocating. The Sol Dawn was the closest vessel. Captain Lee Dae-sung did not wait for orders. He never did when lives were at stake. "It set course for Thalian Prime 7, he commanded. Maximum speed. His crew moved with purpose. They had done this before. Rushing toward danger while others fled, it was what humans did. It was who they were. The rescue took 18 hours. 18 hours of chaos and terror. The Voidborn had not fully left the system. Shadow ships circled like predators waiting for prey. Lee's crew worked in the darkness, evacuating civilians while fighting off attacks. 12 human crew members died that day. Their names were Park Jin-soo, Kim Sora, Lee Min-ho, Choi De-jin, and 8 others. Young men and women who had volunteered to serve among the stars, who had believed that their sacrifice would matter. When the Sol Dawn returned to Council space with 40,000 saved lives, there was no celebration. The Council's official report on the rescue credited Allied forces with the evacuation. Humans were not mentioned. The 12 dead received no recognition. Their names were not recorded in Council archives. Delegate Mora of the Thalian Empire found ambassador Yuna alone in a quiet corridor of the Council station. Mara was different from the others. She had always looked at humans with curious respect rather than disdain. "Ambassador," she said softly, "I wanted to. I am sorry." For what happened? For the lack of recognition? It was wrong. Yuna looked at her with tired eyes. "Your people are safe. That is what matters. But your people died for them. That should matter too." Yuna smiled, but it was a sad smile. The kind of smile that appears when hope begins to fade. Apologies change nothing. Delegate Mara, only actions do. She walked away, leaving Mara standing alone with her guilt. That night, Admiral Kim Tae-ho called a closed meeting. All human representatives gathered in a secure room on the delegation ship. The windows were sealed. No alien eyes would see them. No alien ears would hear them. Tae-ho stood at the front of the room. For a long moment, he simply looked at the faces before him. Soldiers who had bled for strangers. Scientists whose work had been stolen. Diplomats who had swallowed insults for decades. Good people who deserved better. "We have given everything," he said finally. His voice was quiet but heavy with meaning. "Our knowledge, our labor, our lives. For 30 years, we have proven ourselves again and again. We have healed their sick, protected their borders, died on their battlefields. And in return, what have they given us?" No one answered. They all knew. Silence. Tae-ho continued. "Dismissal. They call us primitive while using our technology. They call us emotional while we save their children. They cannot even remember the names of our dead." He paused and looked out at the stars beyond the sealed windows. "Perhaps we have been speaking the wrong language," he said. "We have used words, actions, sacrifices. None of it was heard. But there is one language that everyone understands. One message that cannot be ignored." Yuna stepped forward. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Tae-ho turned to face her. His eyes held no anger, only a terrible, quiet certainty. "Silence," he said. "We have given them everything, and they have given us nothing but silence. Perhaps it is time we return the favor. Perhaps it is time we stop giving. Stop speaking. Stop trying." The room was still. Everyone understood what he meant. It was not revenge. It was not punishment. It was simply stopping. No more hands reaching out. No more hearts offered. Just quiet withdrawal. Captain Lee De-song stood up slowly. His face still carried the grief of 12 lost friends. "I have watched my people die for those who will not remember their names," he said. "I cannot do it anymore. I support the Admiral." One by one, others stood. Dr. Choi Hannah, young officers, veteran diplomats, all rising in agreement. Yuna looked at them all. Then she looked at Tae-ho. "Then we walk away," she said softly. In silence, Tae-ho nodded once. In silence. There were no announcements. No angry speeches. No declarations of hurt or demands for apology. Humanity simply began to leave. It started small. Human engineers stationed on distant space stations requested transfers back to Earth. Medical teams finished their current patients and quietly packed their equipment. Scientists closed their laboratories, archived their research, and boarded transport ships heading home. No one explained why. When asked, they simply smiled politely and said it was time to go. On the Korath homeworld, human agricultural team had spent 5 years teaching new farming methods to local villages. They had increased food production by 300%. The villagers loved them. Children called them by name. One morning, the humans gathered their things and said goodbye. The village elder asked when they would return. "We are not coming back," said the team leader, a woman named Kong Sumin. Her voice was gentle, but firm. "But why?" the elder asked. "Have we done something wrong?" Sumin shook her head. "No, you have done nothing wrong. But sometimes it is time to go home." She did not mention the council. She did not speak of insults or ignored sacrifices. She simply walked away. And the village watched in confusion as the human ship rose into the sky and disappeared. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated itself. Human presence, once spread across hundreds of worlds, began to shrink. Slowly, quietly, like water evaporating under a gentle sun. Ambassador. Park Yuna walked into the council chamber one final time. She carried a single document in her hand. Her footsteps echoed in the great hall, but she did not approach the speaking platform. She simply handed the document to a council attendant. "Please deliver this to High Arbiter Velix," she said. The attendant looked at her with confusion. "Would you not prefer to present it yourself, Ambassador? A formal address, perhaps?" Yuna shook her head. "There is nothing more to say." She turned and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. The document contained only one sentence. Earth formally withdraws from provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. When Velix read it, he laughed. He actually laughed. "The humans have given up," he announced to the council. "Perhaps this is for the best. Their departure simplifies logistics. We no longer need to accommodate their emotional needs." Some delegates joined his laughter, but not all. Delegate Mara sat in silence, her hands folded in her lap. The Korath ambassador shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "They did not even argue," he muttered to his aide. "They did not make demands or accusations. They just left. That is not like humans. Something is wrong." His aide shrugged. Perhaps they finally accepted their place. The ambassador said nothing, but his eyes held doubt. On the research station orbiting a dying star, Dr. Choi Hannah supervised the packing of her laboratory. 20 years of work carefully placed into containers. Her research on the Voidborn, her medical discoveries, all of it going back to Earth. A Thalian colleague named Vex approached her. They had worked together for 5 years. He had always respected her, even when others did not. "Hannah," he said, using her first name as friends do. "Why are you leaving? Your work here is important." "The Voidborn research alone could save millions," Hannah finished his sentence. "Yes, I know." "Then why?" Hannah stopped packing. She looked at Vex with eyes that held no anger, only sadness. "Last month, my research was presented to the council," she said. "Research that took me 15 years to complete. Research that could change the war. Do you know whose name was on the report?" Vex was silent. "You knew." "Everyone knew." "I do not blame you," Hannah continued. "You did not make that decision. But I cannot stay in a place where my work is stolen and my name is erased. I have given too much already." She closed the final container and placed her hand on it gently. "You will understand eventually," she said. "When you realize what you are losing," she walked away, leaving Vex standing alone among empty shelves and silent machines, the last human ship to leave. Council space was the Busan Star. Captain Lee Dasong commanded it personally. He had requested this duty. He wanted to be the last one out. The ship was not large, but it was filled with humans who had served across the galaxy. Doctors and soldiers, engineers and teachers, all heading home. All carrying memories of worlds they had helped, people they had saved, sacrifices no one would remember. As the Busan Star approached the border of council space, Dasong stood on the bridge and looked at the view screen. Behind them, the great stations of the Galactic Council glittered like jewels in the darkness. Ahead lay human space. Home, his first officer, a young woman named Yoon Hana, stood beside him. "Captain," she said quietly, "are we doing the right thing?" Dasong considered the question. He thought of the 12 crew members who died at Thalian Prime 7. He thought of their families who would never see them again. He thought of the council report that did not even mention their names. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I know we cannot keep giving ourselves to people who see us as nothing. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking." Hana nodded slowly. She understood. The Busan star crossed the border. Behind them, council space continued without them. Stations hummed. Ships flew. Aliens went about their business, barely noticing that something important had changed. Daesung looked back, one final time at the glittering lights of the council. Then he turned away. He did not say goodbye. He did not curse them or wish them harm. He simply turned his back on beings who had never truly seen him. And he walked forward into the quiet darkness of space. Behind him, the galaxy continued to spin, unaware that it had just lost something precious, something it would not understand until it was far too late. 6 months after the last human ship crossed the border, the galaxy began to fall apart. It did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, like a building losing its foundation one brick at a time. At first, no one noticed. Then small problems appeared. Then those small problems became big ones. And then, finally, everyone understood what they had lost. The Voidborn pushed deeper into council space. Commander Uris led the combined galactic fleet against them, confident in his superior numbers and advanced technology. He had always believed that humans were overrated. Simple creatures with simple tactics. The war would be easy without them complicating things. He was wrong. The first battle at the Reller Corridor was a disaster. Rees commanded his ships the way he always had. Direct attacks. Overwhelming force. Standard formations that had worked for centuries against lesser enemies. The Voidborn did not fight like lesser enemies. They moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing without warning. They did not follow rules. They did not behave predictably. Rees found himself fighting an enemy he could not understand. Human tacticians had understood. Captain Lee Daesung had spent years studying Voidborn patterns. He had developed strategies that used their unpredictability against them. But Lee was gone. His strategies were ignored, and Uris refused to admit he needed help. The fleet lost 40% of its ships in 3 hours. Uris retreated in disgrace. On the planet Theron 5, a plague began to spread. It moved fast, jumping from host to host with terrible speed. Local medical teams tried to contain it, but they had never seen anything like this before. Human doctors had seen it. 20 years ago, a similar plague had threatened the Koroth homeworld. Human medical teams had developed a containment protocol that stopped it within weeks. That protocol was in the Council's medical database, filed under Human Contributions to Galactic Health. No one read it. The database was too large, and no one thought to search for human solutions. By the time someone found the protocol, 3 million people had died. 3 million lives that could have been saved. Trade routes began to collapse. Ships that once moved freely between star systems now found themselves stranded at broken stations and damaged ports. Cargo rotted in holds. Merchants went bankrupt. Economies that had thrived for centuries started to crumble. The Council did not understand why. They had always assumed their trade network was self-sustaining. They did not know that human engineers had quietly maintained 40% of the galaxy's emergency infrastructure. Navigation beacons, fuel stations, communication relays. Small things that no one noticed until they stopped working. Now they stopped working, and no one knew how to fix them. On the refugee world of Talos 9, desperate families sent distress calls into the void. Their planet was dying. The Voidborn had poisoned their water. Their children were sick. They needed help. Years ago, human ships would have answered within hours. Humans always came when someone needed help. It was what they did. It was who they were. No human ships came now. The distress calls went unanswered. The families waited and hoped and prayed to gods who did not listen. Eventually, they stopped calling. Delegate Mora stood before the council with fury in her eyes. She had watched the collapse happen. She had warned them, and they had not listened. Now she would make them listen. "We are fools," she said, her voice echoing through the crystal hall. "Blind, arrogant fools. For 30 years, humans carried this galaxy on their backs. They healed our sick. They protected our borders. They maintained systems we did not even know existed, and we mocked them for it. We called them primitive, emotional, workers who did not deserve a seat at our table." Felix tried to interrupt, but Mora silenced him with a look. "They were the heart of this galaxy," she continued. "We laughed at their compassion, but their compassion held us together. Without them, we are falling apart. And the worst part? They did not leave in anger. They did not curse us or threaten us. They simply walked away in silence, because silence was the only language we ever gave them." The chamber was quiet. No one laughed now. No one made jokes about primitive humans. They were too busy watching their worlds burn. Commander Yuri sat alone in his quarters, staring at a star map. Every system humanity had touched was now struggling. Medical crises, infrastructure failures, military defeats. The pattern was undeniable. He thought about all the times he had dismissed human officers, all the strategies he had ignored, all the warnings he had not heard. "They carried more than we knew," he whispered to the empty room. "They carried more than we deserved." On the observation deck of the Council Station, High Arbiter Velox stood in shadow. His silver skin no longer reflected light with pride. It seemed dull now, worn down by months of failure and fear. He had believed humans were unnecessary, simple creatures that complicated galactic politics with their emotions and their constant need for recognition. He had genuinely thought the galaxy would be better without them. He was so very wrong. Old recordings played on screens throughout the station now. Someone had found them in the archives and started sharing them. Humans rescuing alien children from burning ships. Human engineers working through disasters without rest or thanks. Human soldiers dying on battlefields for planets that were not their own. For people who would never remember their names, the recordings played on repeat, and beings who had once laughed at humanity now watched in silence. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Voidborn continued their advance. They did not care about politics or pride. They only cared about destruction. And the galaxy that had cast out its protectors now faced them alone. The unraveling continued, and there was no one left to stop it. 1 year after humanity walked away, the Galactic Council finally understood. They understood too late, but they understood the galaxy was falling. The Voidborn had consumed 12 more systems. Trade routes lay in ruins. Plagues spread without control. Worlds that had prospered for millennia now sent desperate cries for help that no one could answer. And through it all, the silence from human space remained unbroken. High Arbiter Velox had resisted for months. He had insisted that the Council did not need humans. He had blamed the collapse on other factors. Bad luck. Poor timing. Inferior allies. Anything except the truth. But truth does not care about pride. It waits patiently until there is nowhere left to hide. The Council voted to send an envoy to Earth. Velox did not oppose it. He could not oppose it anymore. He sat in his chair with empty eyes and watched as the decision was made. The being who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, workers now placed his hope in their return. The envoy ship was the finest vessel the Council possessed. It carried gifts from 100 worlds, rare metals and precious stones, advanced technology, treaties promising full membership, equal voting rights, and recognition of all human contributions. Everything humanity had asked for over 30 years, offered now in desperation. Delegate Mora led the mission. She had volunteered. She was the only council member who had ever shown humans genuine respect. If anyone could reach them, she believed it might be her. The ship crossed into human space and stopped at the border. They had not been invited further. So they waited in the void between stars, surrounded by darkness and silence. For 3 days, nothing happened. The envoy sent messages. They announced their presence. They requested communication. The silence continued. On the fourth day, a single human ship appeared. It was not large or impressive. A simple vessel with clean lines and no decorations. It approached slowly and stopped a short distance away. Admiral Kim Tae-ho transported to the envoy ship alone. He wore his uniform, but he carried no weapons. His face was calm, unreadable. He had not spoken to any alien in over a year. He was not sure he wanted to speak now. Mora greeted him in the ship's meeting chamber. Around her stood other delegates, each carrying their gifts and treaties. Their eyes held hope and fear in equal measure. Admiral Tae-ho Mora said. Her voice was soft with genuine emotion. "Thank you for meeting with us." Tae-ho nodded once but said nothing. He simply waited. Mara gestured at the gifts arranged around the room. "The Council has sent these as a symbol of our respect. We offer Earth full membership in the Galactic Council, equal standing with all species. Recognition of every contribution humanity has made. Everything you asked for, we now offer freely." Still Tae-ho remained silent. An older delegate stepped forward. His name was Vorn, and he had been one of those who laughed at Yuna's proposals years ago. He was not laughing now. "Please," Vorn said. "Return to us. We need you. We were wrong. The galaxy is dying without you." Tae-ho looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only a deep, quiet sadness. "I were wrong," he agreed. His voice was soft, but clear. "You were wrong for 30 years. And for 30 years, we told you so. We showed you so. We proved it with our actions, our sacrifices, our blood. And you laughed." He paused and looked around the room at all the desperate faces. "For 30 years, our scientists healed your sick, and you took credit. Our soldiers died for your worlds, and you forgot their names. Our engineers kept your stations running, and you never noticed until they stopped. We gave you everything human beings have to offer. Our kindness, our curiosity, our stubborn will to protect those who cannot protect themselves." His voice remained steady, but each word carried the weight of years. "And what did you offer us? Contempt. Dismissal. You called us primitive while using our technology. You called us emotional while we saved your children. You gave us nothing but silence. So we learned from you. We learned that silence is the only language you understand." Mora's eyes filled with tears. She had known this would be hard. She had not known it would hurt this much. "Admiral," she whispered, "is there nothing we can do? No way to earn your trust again?" Tae-ho looked at her for a long moment. He remembered that she had been kind once, when kindness was rare. He remembered Yuna mentioning that Mora had apologized. "Trust is earned through actions, not words," he said. "You offer us full membership now, when you need us. Where was this offer when we needed you? You offer recognition now when your worlds burn. Where was this recognition when our soldiers died unnamed?" He shook his head slowly. "We do not hate you. Hatred requires energy, and we have spent too much energy on beings who did not value it. We simply have nothing left to give you. You've taught us that giving is foolish when receiving nothing in return. We were slow learners, but we learned." Vorn fell to his knees, actually fell to his knees before a human. A sight that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Then what can we do?" he pleaded. "We will do anything." Tae-ho looked down at him without satisfaction. There was no joy in watching proud beings beg, only sadness. "Learn to hear silence," he said. "Learn what it means when those who always reached out stop reaching. Learn the value of those you overlooked. And perhaps one day, when you have truly changed, perhaps then we will talk again." He turned to leave. Mara reached out but did not touch him. "Will you ever return?" she asked. Tae-ho paused at the door. He thought of Yuna, who had given 30 years to beings who never respected her. He thought of Daesung, whose crew died unnamed. He thought of Hannah, whose work was stolen without shame. "When you learn to hear silence," he said, "you will have your answer." He walked through the door and was gone. The envoy ship returned to council space with empty hands. The gifts remained in their boxes. The treaties remained unsigned. The galaxy continued to fall. But something had changed. Delegate Mora returned to her quarters and found a small box she had kept for years. Inside was a flower from Earth. Yuna had given it to her long ago, when they had first met. A gift of friendship that Mara had never properly returned. She placed the flower on her desk and began to write. A new proposal. Not for the council to consider, but for herself to live by. On the value of those we overlooked, she titled it, Somewhere on Earth. Ambassador Park Yuna watched the sunset from a garden filled with flowers. Dr. Choi Hannah sat beside her, quiet and peaceful. Do you think they will change? Hannah asked. Yuna smiled faintly. It was not a sad smile anymore. It was a patient one. Change is slow, she said. But silence is patient. We have given them something they never had before. We have given them the chance to listen. Hannah nodded and watched the colors spread across the sky. Far above them, stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy spun on, wounded but still alive. And in the space between worlds, silence hung like a question, waiting to be answered. Humanity had spoken for 30 years without being heard. Now their silence spoke, louder than words ever could. And somewhere, slowly, the galaxy was beginning to listen.